Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine these sort of invisible forces shaping our world, shifts happening constantly, beneath our feet and way above our heads.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists are calling them anomalies, deviations from the norm, things that really demand a closer look.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we've gathered quite a stack of sources. We're talking reports, research papers, even some chatter from the online science community.
Right.
And they all seem to point towards significant anomalies that organizations like NASA are actively monitoring on and around Earth.
So our mission today is pretty clear. Take all this material, sift through it, and pull out the key insights for you. We want to understand, what are these anomalies? Why do they matter? And what's science doing about them?
Exactly. Cut through the noise, find the important stuff.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And, well, maybe one of the most discussed anomalies in the sources we looked at is the South Atlantic Anomaly.
Ah, yes, the SAA.
It sounds a bit dramatic, doesn't it? What exactly is the South Atlantic Anomaly?
Okay, think of our planet wrapped in this huge magnetic bubble, right? Our magnetic field. It shields us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the SAA is a specific spot, mostly over the South Atlantic, like the name suggests, where that magnetic bubble is significantly weaker than average.
Mm-hmm.
The sources often just call it a dip in the field strength.
A dip, okay. Is this something new? And, the big question, is it something the average person walking around should be worried about?
Yeah, good questions. And the sources are really consistent here. No, definitely not new. It's been known about for decades, certainly since the early 2000s.
Okay.
And some theories even push its origins way, way back. But crucially, the consensus is, for people on the surface, it's not a huge deal. It does not pose an immediate danger to life down here.
Okay, well, that's a relief. So if it's not, zapping us down here, why is it such a focus for NASA and other space agencies? Why the concern?
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting and frankly directly relevant to our modern lives.
Mm-hmm.
The main concern isn't us on the ground, it's our tech up in space. Specifically, satellites in low Earth orbit, LEO, and medium Earth orbit, MEO. These are the workhorses, right? GPS, communications, internet access, all that stuff.
And the SAA affects them. How?
So in this weakened magnetic field area, the inner Van Allen radiation belt, that's a zone of trapped energetic particles, it actually dips much closer to Earth's surface. We're talking maybe down to 200 kilometers in some spots within the SAA.
Wow, that close.
Yeah. So satellites flying through that region get hit with significantly more radiation than they would elsewhere in their orbit.
Got it. So our protective shield has this thinner spot, letting more of those energetic particles through right where our crucial satellites are flying. What kind of actual effects does this have on the spacecraft?
The sources give some pretty concrete examples. This radiation bombardment can cause, well, a range of issues. Things like single event upsets, basically temporary electronic glitches, or more serious damage to sensitive components over time. It can trigger false alarms, like making a satellite think there's a solar flare when there isn't. It's even been linked to the destruction of the Hitomi X-ray telescope a few years back, and apparently it can even cause laptops on the International Space Station to crash or act up.
Crashing laptops in space. Okay, that definitely highlights the issue. So this isn't just some theoretical thing. The SAA is a real practical headache for space operations.
Exactly. Maintaining the satellites we all rely on every day, navigation, communication, weather forecasts, it requires constant monitoring of the SAA. NASA and others track its size, shape, intensity changes really closely.
Why? Just to know where it is.
Well, yes, but also because that data is vital for designing satellites that can withstand the radiation hardening, they call it, and for planning orbits to minimize how much time spacecraft spend inside the riskiest parts of the anomaly. It helps mitigate potential damage.
Makes sense. Okay, let's zoom out a bit from just the SAA. How does the Earth's magnetic field overall work as our shield? What's its bigger role?
Oh, it's absolutely fundamental. Life as we know it probably wouldn't exist without it. This magnetosphere deflects most of the solar wind, that constant stream of charged particles from the sun.
Right.
Most particles get channeled around Earth or funneled towards the poles. That's what creates the auroras, the northern and southern lights.
Beautiful side effect.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But crucially, the shield also blocks a lot of harmful radiation gamma rays, most UV, X-rays from space, preventing dangerous levels from reaching the surface.
Our cosmic umbrella, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So while the SAA isn't a direct threat now, what about the idea of the entire field weakening? Do the sources touch on potential long-term implications of that?
They do. It's more speculative, looking at much longer timescales, obviously. But some sources explore what could happen if the whole global field weakened significantly and stayed weak for a long time.
Like during a pole reversal.
Potentially, yes, or just a prolonged period of low strength. The suggestions include increased radiation exposure at the surface, which over generations might contribute to health issues, like higher cancer rates, maybe. Some sources even mention more tentative links to things like increased geological instability or contributing to past climate shifts. But those are really complex areas still under investigation.
And is there actual evidence the field is changing overall, not just the SAA dip?
Yes, definitely. Data from missions like the European Space Agency's swarm satellites, they're specifically designed to measure the magnetic field with high precision, show a clear trend. The global field strength has been weakening overall, noticeably just over the last few decades. This weakening, plus the SAA's behavior, could possibly indicate we're in the very, very early stages of a long process leading towards a geomagnetic reversal.
Where the magnetic poles flip. North becomes south.
Exactly. But we need to stress, the sources emphasize this is a very long-term process. We're talking thousands of years for it to complete.
Right, not something for tomorrow's forecast.
Not at all. But it's part of understanding the planet's long-term dynamics.
Okay, so the SAA is one magnetic anomaly. But it sounds like that's just the tip of the iceberg. Science is tracking a whole bunch of different anomalies, right?
That's right. Magnetic shifts are just one piece of the puzzle. The sources we reviewed cover several other types of anomalies across different Earth systems that scientists are keeping a close eye on.
Like what else? Give me another example.
Okay, how about water? Terrestrial water storage, or TWS. This isn't just lakes and rivers.
Right.
It includes groundwater, soil moisture, snow, ice, the whole picture. And TWS anomalies are basically significant deviations from the expected amount of water in different regions.
And are these changing?
Dramatically, according to the data cited. Globally, TWS apparently decreased by a massive 7,404 cubic kilometers just in 2024.
7,000 cubic. That sounds like an unbelievable amount of water. How big is that?
It's huge. For perspective, think Lake Huron, one of the Great Lakes. That's roughly the volume of water that vanished globally in just 1 year. And the sources say this was nearly 800 cubic kilometers more lost than the year before, in 2023.
Wow. And what's driving these huge water shifts? Is it just weather patterns?
Not entirely. According to the sources, about 63% of that global loss between 2023 and 2024 is linked to anthropogenic factors.
Meaning human activity.
Yeah, things like melting glaciers and ice sheets because of warming temperatures and unsustainable groundwater pumping for agriculture and cities. The rest, about 37%, is attributed to natural climate variability rainfall patterns, El Niño, La Niña cycles, that sort of thing.
Does this show up differently in different places?
Oh, absolutely. The data shows really clear regional variations. For instance, parts of North and South America, Southern Africa, they saw droughts get worse, bigger negative water anomalies in 2024. But then other areas like northwestern Europe, central Russia, the Sahel region in Africa, parts of East and Central Africa, they actually saw TWS increase or drought conditions ease up, often tied to heavier rainfall.
Fascinating how it plays out so locally. Okay, water shifts. What about anomalies deep inside the Earth? Geological ones.
Yeah, the sources touch on that too. There's the ongoing monitoring of major geological features like supervolcanoes. Yellowstone gets mentioned specifically.
Of course.
Highlighting its history of truly massive eruptions that could, cover huge areas in ash. The USGS keeps very close tabs on seismic activity, ground swelling there, even running simulations of what an eruption might look like.
Right.
The sources also make this intriguing, brief mention of scientists monitoring unknown forces beneath Earth's crust.
Ooh, unknown forces. Sounds mysterious.
It does. It suggests there are still fundamental processes deep inside the planet affecting the surface that we don't fully understand yet.
And then there's the topic that always sparks debate, UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, what most people used to call UFOs. What do the sources say about how science is approaching these anomalies?
Well, NASA is definitely involved in studying UAP alongside other agencies. The approach described in the sources is strictly scientific.
Oh, so?
Using existing tools. Space-based sensors, Earth observation data. They try to cross-reference UAP sightings with known environmental factors, weather, atmospheric conditions, even checking if the sensor itself might have malfunctioned. And increasingly, they're looking at using AI, machine learning, to sift through massive data sets for patterns.
What are the biggest challenges they face with UAP research, according to what you read?
The number one issue, stressed repeatedly in the sources, is data quality, or rather, the lack of good data.
Meaning?
Issues like sensors not being properly calibrated, missing metadata, information about the observation itself, and just not having enough baseline data on mundane things that could explain sightings. Plus, there's the stigma.
Ah, right. People worried about reporting strange things.
Exactly. The historical ridicule associated with UFOs can discourage pilots, military personnel, even the public, from reporting what they see. That limits the data available for serious study. Analyzing complex cases, like that famous Go Fast video, shows just how hard it is to reach firm conclusions without really robust multi-sensor data.
So it really boils down to needing more data and better quality data to apply proper scientific methods.
Precisely. The sources mention the Pentagon's ARO office is the lead, but NASA's providing scientific support. They're looking into ways to improve data collection, maybe standardized reporting from commercial pilots, perhaps even crowdsourcing data via smartphone apps to build a more reliable picture.
Interesting. And you mentioned something about atmospheric anomalies even higher up.
Yeah, just a brief note in one source about some unexplained detections around 90 kilometers altitude. Things that currently have scientists, well, puzzled. It's just another reminder that even seemingly familiar parts of our environment can hold surprises.
Now, the sources also bring up something that isn't a natural anomaly itself, but definitely affects how we deal with them. Politics. Political influence.
That's a really crucial layer, yes. The material we reviewed discusses how political factors can sometimes interfere with scientific research into anomalies and risks, and also how that information gets communicated, or maybe not communicated, to the public.
How does that influence actually work, according to the sources? What methods are described?
So the sources neutrally report on several methods, things like alleged censorship, removing scientific reports from government websites, for example, or disabling data portals. Also, cutting funding for certain types of research, particularly areas like environmental security, and of course, deliberate efforts to shape public perception about scientific findings or potential threats.
Is there a specific example given?
Yes, one source points to actions during the Trump administration as an illustration. It describes claims of purging documents related to environmental security threats, like climate change impacts, censoring specific research findings, and suppressing climate science used by the national security community for risk assessment.
And the argument is that this kind of thing is harmful.
The argument presented in that source, yes, is that such actions can effectively blind decision makers and the public to real risks by withholding or downplaying objective scientific information.
What's the impact then on the scientists themselves or even on something like national security?
Well, according to the sources, things like classifying military sensor data, even if it's just to protect the sensor's capabilities, not necessarily what it saw, can inadvertently fuel mystery and speculation around things like UAP.
Right.
And for scientists studying controversial or unusual topics, if there's negative feedback or hints that it could harm their careers, it creates a chilling effect, a stigma, that hinders open reporting and collaboration. The sources argue that messing with the free flow and objective analysis of data, whatever the topic, can ultimately jeopardize national security by preventing a clear assessment of potential threats.
But the anomalies themselves don't care about politics.
Exactly. The sources make that point too. Physical reality just keeps going, regardless of political maneuvering or attempts to suppress information about it.
It really underscores that complex relationship between science, information, and policymaking. So, okay, given this huge range of anomalies, magnetic, water, geological, atmospheric, UAP, how does science actually monitor all this? What are the tools?
It's a massive coordinated effort, really, using a whole toolbox of technologies and methods described across the sources. You've got space-based assets, like the SWARM satellites for magnetism, or the NISAR mission that uses radar to map tiny changes on Earth's surface, great for tracking water, ice, ground movement, and maybe even providing context for UAP sightings. Then there are extensive ground networks like the NEXRAD weather radar system, which can sometimes pick up other atmospheric stuff too. Decades of archived data in repositories are crucial, and there's a huge growing role for advanced computing.
AI and machine learning.
Exactly, trying to process these immense data sets. But as the sources rightly point out, the AI is only as good as the data you feed it. Data quality is still key.
And maybe even tapping into the public, like with the UAP data ideas.
Potentially, yeah. It seems science is using everything available, from multi-billion-dollar satellites down to exploring citizen science, all guided by the scientific method, Impartial collection, analysis, and interpretation, trying to figure out what's really going on.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty clear scientists are tracking this whole world of unseen shifts and deviations. We've got that critical dip in the magnetic shield messing with our space tech.
The SAA.
Vast, accelerating changes in global water storage with a big human footprint.
Yeah, the TWS anomalies.
The quiet watch over potential supervolcanoes, those perplexing UAP sightings, even unexplained stuff way up in the atmosphere. Our planet is just incredibly dynamic, isn't it? Full of surprises.
Absolutely. And understanding these changes isn't just, academic curiosity. It's vital. Protecting our technology, assessing hazards, adapting to environmental shifts, and just fundamentally understanding this complex, evolving planet we live on.
It really does leave you with a sense of, I don't know, maybe awe. Considering all these constant, sometimes startling shifts that science is still trying to fully get a handle on, it makes you wonder, what unexpected anomaly might they uncover next? Something that completely changes how we see our place, not just here, but out there in the cosmos.